I once heard the British novelist David Mitchell give a reading from his novel The Thousand Autumns of Jacob de Zoet, a historical novel. And he was asked the question, what do you research when you're writing a novel like this? How do you know what it's okay for you to make up and when you should really stick to the historical record? And his take was like this. He said, look, if you've got a big famous character or a big famous event, I think the example he gave was the Battle of Waterloo, that everybody knows about, you're kind of stuck with that. You have to work around that. At the other end of the scale, if you have a really tiny or trivial event, what did Napoleon eat for breakfast on any given day, which nobody knows and you can't possibly go out and research, you have complete license as a fiction writer to make that up. And for him, he said, where things got interesting was in that sort of gray middle area where you had events that weren't trivial necessarily, but maybe weren't known outside of a few university departments, the history specialists. So that was where you had a little bit more license to play. I would add on top of that, I have my own sort of theory about what you need to research and what you're stuck with and what you're allowed to invent as a fiction writer. I would say that there is a spectrum to do with your intent as a novelist. At the one end, if you're researching or if you're wanting to write about a period that's really not very well known to the general public, or you're writing about a personality that people haven't really heard about, you might be, concerned with staying a little bit more faithful to the historical record. Because if you're thinking, well, I'm actually educating people, I'm introducing them to this period of history or this person for the first time, you might feel a certain ethical obligation not to mess with their conception of who that person or what that period is before, they've actually familiarized themselves with it. And then way at the other end of the spectrum, if you're dealing with a very famous person or if you're dealing with a period of history that's really well known, what you might be wanting to do with that is find what's strange in that, find where you can unsettle your reader or make them look at things in an unfamiliar way. I'm thinking of, for instance, something like Wayne Johnson's Colony of Unrequited Dreams, where he takes the life of Joey Smallwood and introduces characters who were completely fictional and who, there were people with living memory of Joey Smallwood who knew that those people didn't exist and weren't in his life. Or you could look at a novel like Thomas Trofimuk's Waiting for Columbus, which takes the story of Christopher Columbus and Queen Isabella and introduces magic realist elements. So for instance, the two of them, Isabella and Columbus, meet in a Starbucks to discuss whether or not she's going to buy him his ships to go to America. So I really think that what you choose to research and where you locate your sort of ethical obligations as a fiction writer has very much to do with your intent and what you're trying to convey with the story that you want to tell.